All right, those closed doors mean this thing's about to happen. How's everybody doing? Anybody here in analytics? Analytics. You know, crazy number crunching, statistics. It's exciting stuff, right? Yeah, no, it's not what you're going to hear. It's not going to have anything to do with analytics, but there are some analytics behind the existence of this session, because for the first time, we have asked somebody to do a breakout session encore. Last year, Alan Spector shared this presentation that you're about to hear, and it was the most highly rated breakout session of the National Conference in 2018. And so good that when we conceived of the notion of bringing Alan back, I said, well, what the heck? Why don't we just bring him back and have him do the same thing? Because one of the things we've heard that's our favorite criticism of the conference is that there are so many good breakout sessions, you don't have the opportunity to get to everything you want. So presumably, y'all missed it last year, and now you're here, and you know what you're getting into, a little bit. I'll tell you some more. Since retiring from the Procter & Gamble Company as the Director of Worldwide Quality Assurance in 2002, that's kind of a big deal, right? Kind of a big deal. Alan has written 7 books, and much on the topic of the non-financial elements of retirement planning in particular. Now focus on that for a second. We have a bunch of seasoned financial advisors here. How many of the elements of retirement planning are non-financial relative to financial? I mean, you've walked people through this, right? This is a huge deal. And indeed, if clients get to the point of retirement and say they're financially independent, but they've done no planning to actually figure out what they want their lives to look like, the whole notion of being successful in meeting their retirement goals starts to lose its luster, doesn't it? All right. Well, why don't you help me welcome then Alan Spector.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you. So it's kind of hard to do this after that introduction. So if you don't leave here thinking that this is like the best thing you've ever seen, I don't want to hear about it. Tell Tim, but I don't want to hear about it. Okay. So Tim, thank you for that, and thank you all for coming this morning. I think the topic is one based on talking with many of you in the hallway all the way back to the learning groups discussions on Saturday night, is something that you believe is important not only to your clients, but perhaps to you as well. So I would ask you as we go through the discussion today to listen with 2 sets of ears. One set of ears is your own, right? And even for the younger folks in the audience, I think you're going to find that the discussion we're going to have, if you take the word retirement out and put in life planning just on its own, will work for you, right? In fact, we've even been asked, do we do this for the Boy Scouts? And it's like, what? And it's like, yeah, this is about life planning, not just about retirement life planning. So I think you'll find that if you listen with your ears, regardless of where you are in your journey, I think that'll be helpful. The second set of ears that I would ask you to listen with is either have a specific client in mind that you may have a really good relationship with, they're approaching retirement, or maybe even a composite of a number of the clients that you have, and listen with their ears as well to think about how this might be beneficial to them as you work with them not only on the financial side, but also on the non-financial side. So we're going to get into that. You learned a little bit about me from Tim. Let me give you a little bit more and then also introduce somebody who's in the room but not in the room. So I did graduate. That's the word Keith uses for retiring. I graduated from the Procter & Gamble Company in 2002. So I've been retired for 17 years, but I've been practicing retirement for 20. And we're going to talk about that concept because it's a key concept as it relates to helping your clients get ready to make that significant life transition. Also, I still play baseball with kids my own age. In fact, in 2 weeks, I'm leaving to go play a tournament in Florida. Looking forward to that. And a number of other things. So you'll learn a little bit more about me as we go through the session here. The other person that I'd like to introduce is Keith Lawrence. Keith is a former Procter & Gamble colleague of mine, close friend, and he was the one that suggested that after I got started on this book writing journey in retirement, he said, you need to write the retirement book because you kind of had it figured out by the time you retired. And when I finally got around to writing it, he said, can I help? So we ended up co-authoring this book and then beginning to do these kinds of discussions and workshops and those sorts of things. So one of the things that Keith brings to the table, other than his passion and intellect and everything else, is he's also a certified retirement options coach, one of only 500 in the country, and that has given us access to a lot more information than we might have had just kind of searching on our own. So as we go through the discussion, I will frequently use we instead of I. That's the we, okay? All right. By the way, we may have time for questions at the end by this agenda for the conference. If we do, we'll do that. If we don't, I'll stay in the room as long as you want. I think I'm the only one standing between you and lunch at that point, so it may be, self-fulfilling as to how much time we spend. But so I'll stay here and answer any questions that you have. Let me start by sharing with you the journey that Keith and I got on now almost 20 years ago. He and I, as we approached retirement, began to talk to our former Procter & Gamble colleagues who had already retired and said, like, what's working, what's not working, what surprises you, those sorts of things. And we were very disappointed with what we heard. Many of them were struggling to find their place in this new phase of life. All kinds of difficult stories were coming our way. One guy even said to us, I feel like I'm at my own funeral. Okay, so wow, I was really looking forward to retirement. Now what? So Keith and I decided that we needed to learn more about this retirement thing for our own benefit. And we eventually got to the point where we could write the book and begin running workshops, and you'll hear a little bit more about that later on. The way we got to that point, along with interviewing former Procter & Gamble colleagues, was to read every book we could get our hands on. We did not do our own research, but we found all of what we could as retirement relevant research. And we continued to also interview lots of other folks individually and as couples. And by the time we published the book, we had talked to probably 250 retirees about, again, what's working, what's not working, what's surprising you, and all those sorts of things. So we learned a lot over that period of time, obviously, and it worked well for us, and then we got to the point where we thought we could share things with others. One of the things we learned was, well, let me back up one second. So we read all of these wonderful retirement books, and there's a lot of them out there. One of the things we found missing in those retirement books in general was none of them answered the question, now that I know everything I know about retirement, what it might look like, so what? What do I do with that information? So Keith and I thought that we could add value by bringing to the party the concept of retirement life planning and provide people with useful tools to be able to actually figure out what they want to do in the future. So we're going to, in the session we have today, we're going to walk through and actually get to the point where you're going to be exposed to some of these tools that we have shared with folks along the way. But the first question we had to answer for ourselves, and now that we think is important to answer for others, is why should we even do retirement life planning? So here's what we've learned kind of in a nutshell. Most people who are approaching retirement do so with a great deal of excitement, but also a healthy dose of anxiety. And I hope you can relate to this as you've talked to clients and parents and friends and whatever, and maybe yourself. And they intuitively know, although they may not be able to articulate it, they intuitively know that they may not be aware of all the challenges that might face them in the future. They've talked to people about it, but they just don't have that really good feel for it. So that's one element. The second element we found is you may ask retirees, how are you doing? And you'll hear words like, I'm satisfied, I'm content, I'm okay, which is great. God bless them. That's a great place to be. But what if their retirements could be even more fulfilling? Because they may not know what the opportunities are to make them that way. So retirement life planning allows you to begin to get at those opportunities, and we're going to be talking today about what those are. By the way, we're also going to talk about what the potential challenges are. Another thing we found is that most people who spend any time doing retirement planning focus almost exclusively on the finances. Critical to do that, important to do that, but it is not sufficient to do that, to have the retirement that they've worked so hard and so long to deserve. So what we suggest is, in order to make all of that come together in a way that helps folks as they approach retirement and that they're in retirement, is that if they have a holistic, we're going to talk later about what that word means in this context, written, we're going to talk later about why it's important to have a written plan, that if they have that life plan, that they increase the odds that they're going to have the retirement that they deserve. So the retirement speaks to the other things that we talked about. The other reason that it's important to have a retirement life plan is that the life plan feeds the financial plan. The financial firms that we've been working with over the last decade consistently tell us that there's two kinds of conversations with clients about the subject matter of financial planning. One is, and I obviously oversimplify this, one is, I'm retiring in 3 years, can we work together to make sure I don't run out of money? Right? That's kind of the classic, I came to you, you're the experts, help me with this. Important conversation, right? But as these firms that we've been working with start having clients understand retirement life planning, the conversation starts to change, and in the feedback we get from the advisors, we hear that the conversation now looks like, I have this retirement life plan, can we build a financial plan to support that? And that becomes a much more nourishing conversation for both parties and makes a whole lot more sense, if you will, than I'm retiring in a few years, can you keep me from running out of money? Obviously, that is woven into the other discussion as well. So the life plan is important for the life itself, and it's also important for the financial plan. One more reason that there should be retirement life planning, and that is, if you do retirement life planning while you're still working, you can practice retirement. Again, that term comes up, and we're going to talk about what that means in a little bit. So our conclusion has been, and it stood the test of time, is regardless of where you and your clients are in their journey through retirement, the right time to start working on life planning is right now, regardless of when that is, right now. So with all that in mind, what I want to do today, it's not the we, because Keith's not in the room. What I want to do today is to introduce to you life planning concepts and tools and resources to help you and your clients move forward on this discussion. So that's why you're in the room, I hope. Coming out of corporate Procter & Gamble, I have to have an agenda. This is what it looks like. We're going to talk about what the challenges are and what the opportunities are in retirement that folks may not be aware of. Excuse me. We're going to talk about 5 myths that we've identified that many people believe in as they approach and enter retirement that may not be true for most people, and we're going to talk about those. We're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about what we refer to as the 10 key elements of a fulfilling retirement. And these are really the list of opportunities for folks to think about and bring these elements into their lives. We'll talk about what some simple tools are as we go forward. And I'm sure each of you has gotten more than once the question of, when should I retire, right, from a client. I'm going to give you a model that'll help you answer that question for them as you go forward with them. And finally, I'll end up with talking to you about some additional resources that you can share with your clients and use yourself. So, what does that all mean? Basically, 20 years of learning, we're going to do it in now 43 minutes, right? So I've been assured by the BAM folks that you all are in the Fast Learners group. If you're not, because buckle your seatbelts, here we go. All right. So the way that we've learned that can help people think about retirement is to talk to them about the 4 A's of retirement. And by the way, what we're covering today is the core of what a workshop would look like with clients if you're interested in wanting to talk about that later. So the first thing we do is what we call awareness, and this is starting to get into some of the issues and challenges that they might face in the future. So as we do this, again, think about what kinds of challenges you might have heard from clients, parents, friends, relatives, and what I want to do is share with you some of them that we found that are pretty consistently at issue for people who are approaching or in retirement. We're not going to spend a lot of time on each one, and you can read down through the list, but let me just kind of give you an overview. The good news is we're living longer than previous generations, but that brings issues, right? So now the financial plan needs to support a longer lifetime. Longevity has improved. One of the other issues with longevity is that age is a marker for a number of diseases. I just read the other day, 73% of cancer diagnoses happen with people over the age of 55, right? We all know about the dementia thing, right? Age is a marker for illness. So those are challenges that people will face, perhaps, and in fact, likely. By the way, as we go through these, we don't start with these because the intent is to tell you never retire or your client should never retire, because this can be kind of a downer. This is kind of the things we heard about when we started interviewing folks. But it is important for you to learn about these things so that you can take steps to mitigate these challenges. That's why we're doing the awareness thing up front. Family dynamics change. As we age into retirement, so are our parents aging, and sometimes they need support. Sometimes our adult children need support. Anybody got a kid living in the basement? You don't have to raise your hand, but boomerang children are an issue. And my generation, generation of many of you in here, sometimes is referred to the sandwich generation because we are between aging parents and adult children, both who need some kind of support. Is that a problem? Not necessarily, but it needs to be built into the planning, not only on the financial side, but also on the life side. Fastest growing divorce rate, couples over the age of 55. I married you for life and for love, but not for lunch every day, right? And retirees frequently go like, oh, this is great, we're going to be together 24/7. Doesn't always work well that way, right? So these are some issues, and you can see there's also just some general things about thriving in retirement that can become issues. And we're not going to go through those in detail, but you can see that those might be problems. So those are some challenges that people might face. And a reason to know about those challenges, again, is to mitigate them by taking some action, but it also helps us understand a little bit more about the 5 stages of retirement that we've been able to identify. And other resources have been able to think about this with different names, but let me walk you through how we think about these stages of retirement. The first stage is anticipation. I'm working, and I'm going to retire someday, right, Liba? Yeah, Liba told me before, she's working on that. Okay, so should I not have made that a... Never retired, okay. We'll talk about that later too. So the first one is anticipation. For most folks, this is the sweet spot of when to get started on planning. Kind of in the 3 to 5 year out range, right? Again, any time is a good time to start, but 3 to 5 years is kind of a sweet spot. So anticipation, getting ahead of it. The second phase is now you're retired, and the second stage is honeymoon. This could be a time of great euphoria, right? No more rush hour. No more late night phone calls. No more early morning meetings. No more, no more, no more. So when you hear don't retire from something, retire to something, sometimes it's not bad retiring from something, and for a while that feels pretty good. Until you get to the end of the honeymoon stage, sometimes it's like 6 to 18 months, some people longer, some people like 3 seconds. And they get to the point of asking themselves the question, whether consciously or subconsciously, is this all there is? And if there's not a good answer for that question, the next stage comes, and this is the one we want to either avoid or spend very little time in, and that's called disenchantment. This is where a lot of the challenges that we just talked about show up. And if you get stuck here, it can be a very difficult time. I would suspect that the guy that told me that he feels like he's at his own funeral was in disenchantment, right? Now, the things we're going to talk about the rest of the way will help you either stay out of disenchantment or spend relatively little time in it, because if you have a good plan, the next stage is rejuvenation, where you're close enough to understanding yourself and what you want to do that you can rekindle the spark, get out of disenchantment, and move on. And the fifth stage is fulfillment, which is where we all want to be. Right? So those are the 5 stages, and the intent is to understand the challenges. And no wonder I'm going the wrong way. My bad. Disenchantment. Okay. We want to understand the challenges, and we want to understand what it's going to take to make sure that we don't fall into and stay in disenchantment. The only other challenge that I would mention is, and it goes back to this concept that many people will tell you, I'm satisfied, I'm content, I'm okay, but they may not be taking full advantage of retirement, is that they have a very limited view of what retirement can be, and they end up in a very small comfort zone, which is comfortable, but not necessarily as fulfilling as it could be. So we want to start talking about how do we expand our vision of what retirement can be. By the way, anybody know where this is? Yeah, somebody say Lake Louise? Oh, cool. No, that's not it. But if you go to Lake Louise and you make a left, and you go into Yoho National Park in the Canadian Rockies, you will find Moraine Lake. And if you haven't been there, go there. Put it on your bucket list. We're going to talk bucket list. Put it on your bucket list. It's spectacular. This was not taken with filters. This is like the real deal. That's what it looks. It's beautiful. Okay, enough of that. All right, so let's start talking about how do we get an expanded vision. One way to do that is to talk about what these myths are that we have found that people that can have as they enter retirement, and talk a little bit about how to think differently about those myths. The first one is that retirement is easy, right? Now, it's not a myth that retirement is, should be, could be, all of that wonderful, but it does take some effort. If you just retire into retirement, there's a risk that you'll not figure it out. Right? I'm going to just kind of lay on a beach for the rest of my life, whatever, because it's going to be easy. Well, no. First of all, you're going to age through retirement and everything that comes with that. But also, if you spend some effort making sure that you have planned your retirement, then you have an opportunity to have the retirement that you deserve. So spending some effort and not treating it as, oh, this is just easy, but spending that effort will make a big difference in retirement. Excuse me. So, and again, let me emphasize that this is not about spending the rest of your retirement planning your retirement. This is about using some pretty simple, easy to use, not take up a lot of time tools in order to get the retirement that you deserve. Excuse me. So that's the first myth, retirement is easy. The second myth is, I'll figure it out later. I actually had a former Procter & Gamble engineering colleague of mine use those exact terms. Fred, what are you going to do in retirement? I'm not sure yet, but I'll figure it out later. That got us listening closely to people who were taking that particular point of view. And what we began to learn is people who took that point of view tend not to figure it out later. They're the ones that get in a very small comfort zone and don't take full advantage of what retirement can be. This is where practicing retirement comes in. So let's talk a little bit about what that means. So what practicing retirement is let's get a retirement life plan. Maybe we're 3 years from retirement, maybe we're 10 years from retirement, doesn't matter. But we're still working, so let's get ourselves a retirement life plan, go through the work to do that. Now, we now know what we want to do in retirement. It's going to excite us. We're looking forward to it. These are things that are on our list. We really want to make these things happen. Why not bring some of those things or parts of them into your life today while you're still working? Think about why you might want to do that. One reason is that maybe it's not as exciting to you as that you thought it would be. So good, change your plan, and when you transition into retirement, now you've got a plan that you're more confident in. Another reason is that if you're a client of one of you fine folks in this room and you have practiced your retirement plan, you now have more confidence going to your advisor and saying, here's my retirement life plan. I've tested it, right? It's good. This is what I want to do. I might change it later, by the way. We're going to talk about that. But here's what I'm thinking about doing. Can we build a financial plan that can help that, right? And to me, the most important reason to practice retirement is if these are the things that you're looking forward to, that you're excited about, that you want to do in retirement, bring them into your life today. Why would you not want to do that? It doesn't mean that you have to now take up all of the time that you spent working and doing other things, but just bits and pieces, as much as you can, but again, not necessarily becoming all-consuming, but bring as much as you can into your life today. So figuring out later runs the risk of never getting started on figuring it out. Practicing retirement gets you on your way a lot quicker. So this is myth number 2. Making sense? Yeah? Okay. So the third one is I'll figure this out later. Retirement is a team sport, right? Whether you're in a couple situation, spouse, partner, whether you have close friends, whether you have other family members, adult children, older parents, all of those people might be and probably will be affected by your retirement. And by the way, those people will affect your retirement. The young lady who's your daughter who's living in the basement right now, how's that going to work when you're retired versus, it might be great, cool. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but have we planned for it? So we suggest, and available on the website, is something we call crucial conversations. This is a list of conversations that we have found that if we prompt them with people who are close enough to you that they will affect your retirement, and your retirement will affect them. If you have the crucial conversations with them up front, you're less likely to run into difficulty later on. And this starts with like, okay, spouse, when are you going to retire? Here's what I've been thinking about. When are you going to retire? Simple things like that to much more, well, that's actually pretty complex, but simple to ask, more difficult to answer. So crucial conversations are important. I suggest not trying to figure it out yourself. Do it with those closest to you and with your advising team and everybody else that's in your support system. Here's one that actually surprises people until they think about it real quickly and then they like get it, and that is, it's a myth that retirement means not working, right? When you retire, you leave your primary career. But the research shows that those who go from full work to full stop, in general, do not have as successful retirements as those who go from full work to some kind of winding down, right? It could be doing what they did in their careers, but part-time. It could be, the classic is, I was an engineer all my life, but I always wanted to teach, right? It could be not for a paycheck. It could be a significant volunteering opportunity. right? That has a lot of the same characteristics of work. And it's not about starting a whole new second career necessarily, although some people have, but it is about taking advantage of the things that you get from work that help you be fulfilled in your life. And there's a long list of what those might be. So working in retirement is not only something you can do, there's evidence that says it's probably something you should do at some level. The final myth, and I work hard not to say the fifth myth because that's hard to say, the final myth is that money equals happiness. And I think you all have, since you're close to that, you're in that business and close to people who may think that, the research is consistent, that money and material things only account for 20% or less than what makes us satisfied and fulfilled and all of those sorts of things. So in our book, we were very careful to make sure that we profiled people who by anybody's measure had huge portfolios, right, but were failing retirement. And we have people in the book with profiles who have very small nest eggs, but they're rocking and rolling in retirement because they have found the best things in retirement are free or cost just a little bit, right? And we're going to talk about those when we go through the 10 key elements of a fulfilling retirement. So those are the myths that many people have. We believe that it's good to bust those myths and then get on with the next stage, which is let's actually start talking about planning. How do you do that? So let's get into what we think is the right way to approach planning. And by the way, I also do strategic planning consulting. And in strategic planning, I start with the same thing. It's like, where are you today? Then where do you want to go? And how do you get there, right? So let's start with assessing where are we today. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to review and figure out where are we relative to the 10 key elements of a fulfilling retirement. Now, we're going to go through this very quickly and maybe faster than I'd like, but we're going to do it anyway. As we go through here, I'm going to share with you the key elements, each key element, talk to you about what those key elements, each key element is, what that is, and then I'm going to give you a statement that if we were in a workshop with a lot more time, we'd be asking you to assess yourself on a scale of where are you today in your life relative to that statement. This is the first stage of planning, assessing where you are. So you ready to do the key elements? All right, ready? Okay, here we go. So the first one is have a plan, right? It's important to have a plan. Whether you're a company, whether you're an individual, whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're whatever, having a plan helps you move forward. And it's important that that plan be written. The reason it's important to be written is the research shows that if you have a plan that is written versus non-written, even though it's the same plan, you're 5 times more likely to do that plan, right? It's why when you work with your clients, they have a written financial plan, I would hope, right? So financial plan, life plan, it should be written. So this would be the statement. I have a plan for my life and retirement. It is written down and up to date. And as you might imagine, most folks that we talk with in workshops don't rate this very highly, right? They may be thinking about it, but they haven't really got to where there's a plan, it's up to date, it's written. Okay, that's key element number 1. By the way, these are in no particular order of importance. As a matter of fact, when we get to the word holistic, what I'm going to suggest to you is bringing all of these key elements into your life in some way is the best approach. So these are just a list. There's no one that's more important than the others. The second key element is knowing what your life purpose is, knowing what your core values are, and importantly, aligning your activities, whether you're still working or you're in retirement, aligning those key activities, to your life purpose. Why is that important? Well, the reason is because all of us play roles in our life, right? Many of you are advisors. I was this director of quality assurance. That was a role. You retire. the next day you don't have that role anymore. So if your life purpose was attached to that role, and for many people it is, and by the way, it doesn't have to be a work role, it could be a family role, it could be whatever. If that's your purpose in life and it goes away, how you doing, right? So spending some time developing, thinking about, and articulating your life purpose is a good thing to be doing, and then aligning your activities to that life purpose. Some people's life purpose is faith-based, some people not. Whatever it is for you, that's fine, but spending some time with it. So I am clear on my life purpose and core values is an assessment statement for that key element. The next key element is attitude, right? So why attitude? Well, if you take out stopping smoking and you look at what contributes most to our longevity, two of the key elements show up. I'll show you the other one later, but one of them is attitude. People who have a positive attitude tend to lean into the future, tend to be predisposed to say yes to opportunities, look at things that happen to them that may be negative to others in a positive way and turn those into opportunities, and on and on and on, right? It's a 7-year difference between people who are viewed as having poor attitudes to having good attitudes, a 7-year difference, and the research has been run in many different ways. By the way, along with the longevity comes quality of life, right? So which one of these guys are you? Everybody know who these are? If you don't, ask your buddy next to you to whatever. So the assessment thing is, let me say one other thing. A lot of people think that hardwire is attitude. You're either an Eeyore or you're a Tigger, and that's who you are. No. There's all kinds of things you can do to improve your attitude, and we spend a lot of time on it in the book. So this is the assessment. Those closest to me describe me as having a positive attitude. I'm a Tigger. The next key element is financial security. You knew this was coming. I would hope you did, right? Financial security is very important, but it's not all important. And what is financial security? Well, we've learned to look at it in a couple of ways, and I think based on talking to a number of you over the last couple of days that you would probably align to this. It is not about the size of the nest egg. It is about whether or not you've matched your lifestyle to your available resources, right? So like, is your budget supported by what your resources are? The other way that we think about it is do you have an unbiased third-party team that can support you in this? And this is where, God bless you all, this is where you show up, right? To help folks do this. So financial security, again, not the size of the nest egg, but that you have a plan that will enable you to securely live your life that you want now and in the future. Key element, financial security. The next key element we call connectedness. You can call it relationships. There's a lot about connectedness. It's not necessarily friend related, but relationships is a word that works for this also. This is the one that is just below attitude for longevity. It's surprising, again, the research is clear. Connectedness, having deep, nurtured friendships, and we're going to talk about another way to think about that in a moment. Deep, nurtured friendships is, if you have them, it's the equivalent of like not being obese, not smoking, of exercising. It can make an impact on your quality of life and your longevity equivalent to a lot of those things, just under 7 years longevity. So do you have deep, nurtured friendships? And there's two ways to think about this. One of them is whether or not you're connected to communities. But the one that is most influential is what we call 2 o'clock in the morning friends. How many people in your life and in your clients' lives could they pick up a phone at 2 o'clock in the morning and call and make that phone call without qualms and know that the person on the other end would come help them if they needed help, and vice versa? That's a 2 o'clock in the morning friend. It can be a relative, it can be a friend. And the research doesn't talk about 2 o'clock in the morning friends, but they talk about the equivalent of those kinds of relationships. And if you have 7 or more of those, the research is pretty consistent on that. One says 12, and we think that might be too high, but 7, then you're going to take full advantage of this key element. When we go through an exercise in workshops, some people, we say, write down your 2 o'clock in the morning friends, and some people get writer's cramp, there's whatever, and some people can't think of somebody. They sit there, right? That's a problem. And many people think, well, I've got lots of friends. Look who I work with. Guess what? In general, when you retire, those are not going to be your deep, they could be. I hope they are. But in general, they're not the people that you're going to be your deep nurtured friendships. So the assessment statement is, I have others who I can really lean on, 2 a.m. friends. The next key element is giving back. Why is giving back important? Well, there's a lot of reasons we want to volunteer and help finance things that go on in our community. Great. But let's be selfish for a moment. In fact, more than a moment. We're talking about building a fulfilling retirement. The research is consistent. People who give back get more out of the exercise than the people they're helping. Consistently shown, right? So good. So it's a win-win. That's great. But it's about what's fulfilling for us. By the way, a corollary to that is the closer you are to the person you're helping, the more fulfilling it is to you. So when you write a check to an organization, important to do. Keep doing it, right? But you're not close to, you're not sitting across from the young person who needs reading help and you're working with them on a one-to-one basis. That's more fulfilling. So, how many people, what percentage of people say that they will volunteer in retirement? 70%, right? How many actually do? Right? 27%. Nothing wrong with fishing. Just as there was, nothing wrong with fishing, nothing wrong with having a beer. That's great, but if that's all you're doing, then maybe you've gotten to the point where you can ask yourself the question, is that all there is? And the risk is that you fall into disenchantment. We don't want to be there, right? So volunteering, giving back is an important part of retirement. I'm engaged in activities that make a meaningful difference to others and by inference make a meaningful difference to me. Passions. Think about, what are your passions? What is it that you love to do, that you love to plan for, that you love to, when you're doing it, you lose track of time. When all those things, what are your passions? So again, in workshops, we go like, okay, shout out your passions. And some people, gardening and baseball, and I love to read, and I'm a cyclist. And some people are like, I don't know. Why? Because I've been working for 40 years and I don't have time for that stuff, right? People will tell you when they're about to retire, I'm concerned about retiring because I have no hobbies. You ever hear that before? I don't know what I'm going to do. So one of the many ways that we get people to thinking about that is, so ask this for yourself, what did you love to do when you were 10 years old? Right? For me, it was baseball or books. If I had a bat or a book in my hand, I was good to go. Well, what am I doing in retirement? I'm writing and I'm playing baseball. And when I had my hips replaced and I couldn't play ball for a year or so, I coached my grandson's team, stayed close to my passion. So if you can, again, similar to purpose, if you can identify your passions and then align your activities to those, then you're going to be rocking and rolling in retirement. So assess yourself. I'm excited about my life and the many activities I enthusiastically pursue. Growth. This is not about retiring and getting fat. This is something else. Consistently, with our Procter & Gamble retirees that we interviewed early on, like 6 or 7 in a row, almost said the exact same words, but in general what they said was, I'm having a difficult time replacing the intellectual stimulation I got at work. You show up every day and you don't have to go like, what's going to intellectually stimulate me? Is that, a matter of fact, enough stimulation already, right? So what is it that you're going to do in retirement that's going to keep the brain working? And we've all heard about all of the dementia issues, that you got to use it or lose it and all all that sort of stuff. But how do you replace that intellectual stimulation? So what we suggest is this could be big things or little things. Big thing might be, I'm going to learn a new language. I'm going to take a course. I'm going to do a brand new project in an area that I've never done before. Or it could be small things. Next time you drive home from the grocery store, take a different path home. Seems like a trivial thing, but when you do that, it fires brains differently and makes a difference. How many of you have ever tried to brush your teeth with the opposite hand? How did that work? Huh? Yeah? Yeah, okay, all right. And then you had to clean it up afterward, right? Seems simple, but anything you can do that breaks your routine can help stimulate the brain cells and keep them going. So, my week is filled with new and challenging activities that help keep my mind sharp. Replace the intellectual stimulation. The next one is like just plain fun. Are you doing things that are just plain fun to do? I would hope so while you're working, but sometimes work gets in the way of that, maybe, right? So have you replaced, or maybe not replaced, but have you found ways to just plain have fun? There's a couple reasons to do this. One is, well, I just said it, it's just plain fun. But another is that frequently along with fun comes laughter, and laughter has been proven to be therapeutic, medically therapeutic, right? In fact, the issue is that kids laugh like, I don't know, what's the numbers, 300 times a day, and us adults laugh like 12 times a day if we're lucky, and it's like, that doesn't sound right. We're the ones who need the therapy, right? So that's important. And do you have a fun meter? I do. What do you mean I have a fun meter? Here's the fun meter I have. So Keith and I, he's in Cincinnati, I'm in St. Louis, right? And we talk frequently about how we're doing with the workshops and all that kind of good stuff. Once every 3 months, we have a conversation and kind of how is it going? And one of us asks the question, where are you on the fun meter? If it ever gets below 8, we quit. We'll go find something else to do, right? So if you think about things that you do as where do they stand on the fun meter, then I think that will be helpful and is a key element of a fulfilling retirement. I have activities in my life that are just plain fun to do. A lot of this, by the way, has to do with the opposite side of planning, and that's spontaneity. When Ann and I go on a vacation, we know where we're going, how we're going to get there, where we're going to stay, what we're going to do, who we're going to see, right? You ask my sister and brother-in-law where they're going on vacation, and they go that way, right? And then they figure it out as they go. They're more spontaneous than Ann and I are, right? But that's kind of the fun that comes from spontaneity. If I've been keeping count, this might be the last one, and it's well-being. We knew that there had to be something in this list that had to do with well-being. So we actually started with the word and then tried to figure out what it meant. So we said, well, what is well-being? So you might think that well-being is health, like being disease-free. Truth, that's part of it, right? It might be being physically fit. Truth, that's part of it. But we found a concept that really made a difference in how we thought about our well-being, and that's the concept of well-being equals energy. Why is this important? We are about to, as a pre-retiree, go into retirement and then age through retirement. All right? We're going to age through retirement. So we need energy. If there's all these things we want to do as part of our plan, we need energy to do them, right? I'm going to go play a baseball tournament in 2 weeks. We're going to play 9 games in 7 days. I need energy to do that, right? And I want to be doing that 10 years from now. So do I have the daily habits that will not only give me the energy today, but will give me the energy in the future to do the things that I want? And we run into, and you may have seen this before, the guy's name is Tony Schwartz. He's got something called the Energy Project. If you're interested in this, he's one of the folks, a number of folks deal with this concept. But he breaks it into 4 quadrants. We're not going to go into the details here. The purpose quadrant, again, frequently for folks is faith-based. But it also lines up nicely with the key elements. So if you're interested in this, again, Tony Schwartz, The Energy Project. So the final assessment that you would do is, I have sufficient energy to fully do what I want in my life, and I practice daily habits to be able to sustain this well into my retirement. In the book, we go through what those daily habits might be that you want to pay attention to. Okay, you've assessed yourself. Now it's time to start asking the question, so what? What do I do with all this information? And this is where we get into having a holistic plan. Again, we want to bring all of these key elements into our life because this is the planning cycle that we're on and that we're going to get on. And by the way, this planning cycle does a great job of being consistent with your planning cycle with your clients. And I think you'll find that it matches pretty well. And we'll talk about that as we go through the next few minutes. So we have assessed ourselves relative to the key elements of a fulfilling retirement. So this model is the stages we talked about, or the steps going up to a fulfilling retirement. The building blocks and the columns support a fulfilling retirement. So we've done our assessment. It's time to do a plan. And remember, the plan is going to be written because we're more likely to do it if it's written. By the way, there's some research that says if you declare the plan out loud, it may be as much as 10 times more likely that you're going to do the plan. So I think what happens is you tell somebody you're going to do it, you create an accountability partner, somebody that you now feel accountable to do this thing. And again, we deal with that in the book. We don't have time to talk it much today. So let's quickly go through the life planning tools. And hang in there, we've got basically 3 more things to do. And then again, I know I'm standing between you and lunch, so hang in there. So life planning tools. We're going to leverage the key elements, so keep them in mind as we do this because you want to bring the key elements into each of these planning tools. One is bucket list. This is not the I'm going to die in 6 months, what do I want to do before I die? This is, what is it I would really look forward to doing, plan for, discuss, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of like passions. It could be big things or little things, like on my bucket list is go to do an Australia-New Zealand trip. Also on my bucket list is there's a new restaurant that opened up around the corner, we're going to go. So it could be big things or little things, doesn't matter. But that's my buddy Keith jumping out of an airplane that's still working. That's not on my bucket list. I don't know if it's on your bucket list. By the way, it's no longer on his bucket list. He's not doing it again. Okay. Right after I took that picture, he said his partner, his coach, whatever they call the guy that he's attached to, took them into a triple somersault. And he said, no, I'm done. All right, so anyway, but he got a nice picture. Okay, so bucket list is one, and I would say we provide a bucket list thing, but all you need is a piece of paper or a computer and you got a bucket list thing. But write it down, because a lot of people have bucket lists but they haven't written it down. They are less likely to do their bucket list items, right? So the second one is what we call start, stop, continue. Again, think about your key elements and think about one where you may not be doing as well on as you would like. What do you want to start in your life to do better? What do you want to stop in your life that might be getting in the way of doing better? And by the way, if you've got a key element that's working real well, what is working well so you can continue doing it and recognize it? It takes maybe a half hour to sit down with a form like this and fill it out. In our workshops, we get people started on this, and it's really quick. And again, this is simple tools that don't take a lot of time to do. Or you can kind of create your own. The form looks like that. Really simple, right? These are all on the website, and I'll tell you about the website in a moment. Another thing that we help people with is something we call ideal day, ideal week, ideal year. So if you were living your ideal day today, probably wouldn't be in here, I get that, but if you were living your ideal day today, what would it look like? Here's mine, right? And I change this every once in a while as I get interested in new things. So on a perfect day, that's what I would do. No day's perfect, but if you know what your ideal day is and you know what your day typically is, it becomes a target. You can start working your plan toward that ideal day. And then you can think about what's your ideal week, because some things that you would want to do, you wouldn't want to do every day. And then you do your ideal year because, you might want to make sure you take a major fun trip every year, but you wouldn't do that every day, so it shows up better in a year chart, right? So ideal day, ideal week, ideal year. There are some difficult and complex decisions to be made in retirement. Frequently people say, now that I'm retired, where should I live? Should I downsize? Should I whatever? Should I work in retirement? And if so, what should I do? I've got all these opportunities. How do I choose which ones to pursue? So there's a way to put your options across the top, consider the key elements down the side, take each one of these little cells and put a plus in it. If it's a positive impact on the key element, a negative if it's a negative impact, and leave it blank if there's no relationship at all. You end up with a map of your decision, pluses and minuses, and it just helps you. And we've used this in coaching all the time, and people really get a kick out of it. Okay, the last one, and the last tool that I would suggest, and this actually is my favorite. This one helps you decide where might you want to volunteer, for example. It's called Finding the Magic. Answer the question, what am I really good at? Answer the question, what are my passions? And answer the question, what is it that my community needs from me? And if you can put those three together to volunteer someplace, you have found the magic. It also allows you to do this for other key elements as well, but it's really perfect for figuring out where do you want to volunteer if you're getting into that. Okay. Once you've got a plan, you've done your plan, it's time to renew your plan. This fits very well with what you do with clients, where you get together periodically and go like, how's it going? Same thing with the life plan. A lot of things change as we age through retirement. Some of them bad, some of them good. Whatever it is, it's likely going to change our plan if it's significant enough. And as I mentioned, it informs financial planning, so it's always a good thing to do. There are some times when it's a good idea to renew your plan. If you're in disenchantment, every once in a while, even if things haven't changed, you can see the list up here. Okay, I'm rushing through this because I really want to spend time on the next piece, which is, okay, Liba, since I know your name, I'll use you. Your client comes up and you say, can I retire? Or when should I retire? So how are you going to answer that question? Let me suggest to you that Liba might tell her client, there are 4 questions to ask. Get it, Liba? 4 questions? Okay. Yeah, okay. So there are 4 questions to ask, and when the answer to all 4 questions is yes, retire. There's no reason to keep working. This is not to suggest that everybody should retire. Some of the no answers here are for very good reason. Love it, right? Keep working. But if the answer to all 4 is yes, time to retire. Do I have enough? Right? That's the one that folks are typically working with you all. Have I had enough? It's been a great career, but I am just not energized to get up and go to work in the morning anymore. I've had enough, right? Will I have enough to do? Said another way, do I have a holistic written retirement life plan? And the 4th one is there somebody close to me that wants me around 24/7? Right? So if the answer to all 4 of those is yes, do I have enough? Have I had enough? Will I have enough to do? And does somebody want me around 24/7? Notice there's no question about how old. It is not about age. It's about these 4 things. All right. Final thing. Oop, my clock says 11:30, so I'm glad it's the final thing. All right. And by the way, as I said, I will stay here as long as you have questions. Just come on up and we'll do it. We won't do it as a group because I think you all are supposed to go run off and do lunch. So here are some resources that you can use and or your clients can use. By the way, there are other sets of resources. These happen to be mine and Keith's. There are other sets of resources. Mark Cook has lovingyourretirement.com, Mark, right? Which speaks to a lot of this as well. There are other resources out there, but let me give you an example based on what we have. So for public use, obviously, the books are available, and there are 2 books. One is Your Retirement Quest, and that's what most of this is based on. The second one is After the Cheering Stops. I wrote a book on my own about the retirement of elite athletes who have a lot of the same issues that baby boomers have when they retire, but guess what? They're 27, right? So what do they do differently? And by the way, it was written in a way that could also help baby boomers think about this if they come out of all-consuming careers. They've dedicated themselves to a career for so long. When is it time to move on after the cheering stops? So those are the two books. The website is yourretirementquest.com, and it's hard to see here, but that's the home page. If you go to Preparing for Retirement and you click Discover More, a menu opens up of the things we've talked about today and a whole bunch of other stuff. You click on what you're interested in. It takes you to a talk sheet and gives you forms and the whole thing. Okay? We have a YouTube channel called Your Retirement Quest. It's got 11 content videos, 3 to 5 minutes apiece. Those videos are also available through the website. So if you go to that topic, the video is also accessible there. We've got a Facebook group for people who are interested in keeping up with information. Keith and I post every week videos and articles and information about retirement so folks don't have to go out and do their own stuff. So that's all available. Just remember the word Your Retirement Quest and you'll get to all of this stuff, right? So there's also resources available to you and your clients that if you wanted to talk about later, we'd be glad to do that. I always start the conversation as I'm retired and I'm not looking for work, so like the ball's in your court. So it's the books. We do customized workshops for clients and for advisors who want to learn more about this so they can enhance conversations with their clients. We do one-to-one coaching, and we also have a highlights video that we can make available to you for your clients. So that's examples of resources that are available to you. As I said, there are others that you can find as well. So if you're interested in learning more about this, here's my contact information. If you want to come up, I'll give you a card too. And I'll leave it, instead of putting on the thank you slide, I'll just leave it here. And thank you. Let me turn this off.